Grant Halverson never asked for excitement. In fact, the 46-year-old accountant had joined the Green Valley Model Railroad Society precisely because it offered the opposite. A quiet room filled with humming transformers, the woody smell of ballast glue, and the comforting click of tiny wheels on nickel-silver rail. As treasurer, he kept the books balanced, replenished the petty cash tin, and recorded each sale of scenery foam and decal sets with monastic precision. Excitement, if it came at all, was supposed to arrive in the form of a new brass locomotive or a rare run of cylindrical hoppers, not as a device that could level the municipal exhibition hall. It started, as disasters usually do, with something small, almost laughably small. At Tuesday's work night, club president Ray Dumont announced that the final piece for the long-awaited Tall Elk Bridge had arrived. The bridge, a show-stopping steel arch 8 feet long and 2 feet high in 1/87 scale, would span the freshly poured canyon on the modular layout and debut at the Green Valley Spring Expo. Ray cradled the boxed segment like a newborn. The rest of the club gathered around, oohing and ahhing, as he peeled away the foam. "Gentlemen and ladies," he added, nodding to the 3 women members, "behold the crown jewel." Grant leaned in. Beveled rivet plates shone beneath a coat of charcoal primer. The lattice work looked almost delicate enough for lace. But one thing jarred, a faint seam at the centerline that shouldn't have been there. Grant's brain filed it away while he joined the applause. Then the lights flickered. "Old wiring," Ray muttered. They returned to their workstations. Grant resumed sorting invoices, yet the faulty seam kept tugging at him. 2 nights later, while triple-checking the club's insurance forms, standard practice before a show, he noticed another anomaly. The rider that covered pyrotechnic displays had been quietly reinstated. He dimly remembered scratching out that clause last year to lower the premium. Someone must have asked the carrier to add it back, and recently. He cornered Ray in the break room. "Did you authorize changes to our liability insurance?" Ray wiped Dullcote off his fingers. "Not me. Why?" "Because someone expanded coverage to include explosions." Ray laughed. "Great joke, Grant. You're wound tighter than 15-inch radius." But Grant wasn't joking. That was Friday. Saturday morning, his phone erupted before dawn. It was Maria Lee, the club's unofficial publicity manager. Somebody broke into the roundhouse. Her voice trembled. "The windows smashed, the alarm panels dead, and the place smells like fireworks." Grant threw on jeans, grabbed the petty cash tin out of habit, and sped across town. The roundhouse, an actual decommissioned locomotive shed converted into their club headquarters, sat in a patch of industrial scrub near the river. Police cruisers surrounded the building. Inside, among scattered plaster debris, lay the Tall Elk Bridge, or what should have been the Tall Elk Bridge. The structure was intact, yet its color had changed. The charcoal primer had been replaced by flat black paint. And when Grant ran a finger across the lattice, a grainy powder came away. Ray arrived minutes later. "What the devil?" Officer Bramwell met them. "We need you outside." Grant resisted. "Hold on, that isn't the piece Ray unboxed Tuesday." Bramwell raised an eyebrow. "Come again?" "There's a seam that didn't used to be there," Grant pointed, "and the finish is different." A bomb squad technician ducked past them. He unspooled a fiber optic scope, slid it into the seam, then straightened slowly. "Sir, we've got something in here." 4 tense hours later, the device lay diffused on a stainless steel tray. The imitation bridge contained a shaped charge and a simple mercury switch. Whoever set it up intended detonation when the bridge flexed under a heavy model consist, possibly during the public show. The blast would have hurled razor-sharp girders across a room packed with children. The club's members milled in the parking lot, shaken, sipping coffee that tasted of metal shavings. "We were one fuse away from a massacre," Maria said, voice cracked. Ray clenched his fists. "Who would want to hurt us?" Silence. Then 30 pairs of eyes settled on the one person versed in ledgers, locks, and minute discrepancies. Grant Halverson. "I'm not a detective," he protested. "No," Maria agreed, "but you're the only one who noticed the seam and the insurance clause. If we rely solely on the police, the Spring Expo will be cancelled, maybe forever. You're methodical, Grant. Find out who tried to kill our hobby." He wanted to refuse, but another thought overrode caution. Someone had exploited his beloved club, risked lives, and nearly destroyed months of collective effort. That felt personal. He nodded. Phase 1. Gather data. Grant spent Sunday poring over sign-in sheets, alarm logs, and invoices. Only 5 people accessed the roundhouse since Tuesday. Ray, Maria, Chip Rutherford, scenery guru, Jessa Ortiz, electrical lead, and himself. The alarm logs showed a partial disarm at 2:14 a.m. Friday, followed by a power failure lasting 6 minutes. So the saboteur knew the code, or was inside already when the system armed that evening. Phase 2. Motives. Who benefited if the bridge exploded during the expo? Competitor clubs? Radical environmentalists angry about model coal trains? Grant dismissed fanciful options and focused inward. Sabotage could mask theft. The club's brass locomotives alone were worth thousands. Yet nothing was missing except the bridge. A rival vendor might hope to disrupt Green Valley's biggest hobby show, funneling visitors elsewhere. Again, thin. Then he recalled the insurance rider. If the club were destroyed, someone might claim a payout. But the club was non-profit. Funds rolled back into rent and supplies. Embezzlement? He had signed every check. The books were clean. Unless someone intended not only destruction, but martyrdom. Boost membership sympathy, secure donations, maybe leverage tragedy into securing a permanent museum grant. A chilling notion. A member willing to gamble lives for funding. Phase 3. Interrogations. He started with Chip Rutherford, found hunched at his basement workbench airbrushing graffiti on a boxcar. Chip pushed magnifiers onto his forehead. "Blow up the roundhouse? You think I did it? Grant, I can't even solder without scorching my fingers." Grant studied him. Chip's hands bore precisely the sort of small burns modelers accumulate, not the hands of a demolitions expert. "What about the insurance rider?" Grant asked. "Ray told me you reinstated it, said you were covering bases." Chip spritzed thinner. "I thought it was smart." Grant digested that and thanked him. Ray told Chip that Grant made the change? Odd. He drove to Jessa's apartment next. Scent of burnt flux permeated her living room. She was rewiring a DCC decoder in her pajamas. "Mercury switch? That's old school," she said. "If I wanted remote detonation, I'd use Bluetooth and a phone app. More reliable." She tapped a keyboard, pulling up schematics. An hour later, Grant left convinced she found the bomber's design amateurish. But she did mention something else. Ray had asked her 2 weeks ago whether a small pyrotechnic gag could be rigged for the expo grand opening. Something theatrical, he'd said, to puff smoke when the ceremonial ribbon train broke through a banner. Grant's stomach lurched. Ray, again. Still, he forced himself to be systematic. He examined bank transfers. found none irregular except a $4,500 withdrawal Ray made the day after the explosive bridge was intercepted. The memo line, supplier reimbursement. There was no supplier invoice matching that figure. He printed the ledger, tucked it under his coat, and headed for the roundhouse, now reopened after police sweep. Ray was there, alone, regluing ballast. He smiled, but the skin around his eyes stayed tight. "Crazy week, huh? What's up?" Grant laid the printout on the control panel. "Describe this reimbursement." Ray glanced. "Oh, we put a deposit on new fascia boards. I forgot to file the invoice." "Mind showing me the quote?" Ray's jaw flexed. "Sure, when I find it. I've reviewed every quote in the past quarter." Ray set down the glue. "What are you accusing me of?" Grant inhaled. "I'm looking at data. You told Chip I reinstated the pyrotechnic rider. You asked Jesser about smoke effects. And you withdrew cash right after the sabotage. Money unaccounted for." Ray's cheeks flushed. "You've been sniffing flux fumes. I love this club. I built this club. Why would I blow it up?" Grant hated confrontation, but pressed. "Maybe to rebuild it larger, with a real museum grant?" Ray laughed bitterly. "You worship your spreadsheets. Real life doesn't balance that neatly." He strode out. Grant's certainty trembled. Could Ray truly risk children for a grant? No. Yet the clues pointed like brass turnout frogs. He needed outside help. He called Officer Bramwell, arranged to meet Monday evening. When he arrived at the station, Bramwell looked harried. "We ran the serial on that mercury switch housing," the officer said. "Sold in bulk to a fireworks distributor in Nebraska. No local leads." Grant shared his suspicions of Ray. Bramwell frowned. "Evidence is circumstantial. Keep digging, Mr. Halverson." On his way out, Grant passed the department bulletin board. A poster fluttered. Tri-State Model Rail Fest, featuring a photo of the tall Elk Bridge. Wait, why would their non-public bridge appear on advertising for a different show? He leaned in. Fine print credited the photo to R. Dumont. According to the poster, the Tri-State Fest would award a $25,000 cash prize for Best Scenic Centerpiece. Grant's mouth went dry. A prize big enough to tempt? Yet the expo dates overlapped the spring event. Ray had ranted earlier that Green Valley's expo refused to adopt electronic ticketing or social media. Tri-State Fest was flashier, bigger. Suppose Ray wanted to bail on Green Valley and jump to Tri-State Fest. But the tall Elk Bridge, funded by club dues, was property of the society. Stealing it outright would spark backlash. Destroy the roundhouse, claim sabotage, insurance pays out. The bridge could have been ruined in the blast, leaving Ray free to rebuild an identical version solo and present it at Tri-State Fest. Far-fetched, but adrenaline whispered it made sense. He texted Maria to meet at the roundhouse, then drove there fast. The parking lot was empty except for Ray's truck. Inside, the layout lights glowed dimly. Grant's steps echoed. "Ray?" Silence. He reached the canyon module. The prototype tall Elk Bridge, now under police chain of custody, was gone, leaving only the canyon gap. But across the aisle sat a crate with shipping labels. Grant pried it open. A brand new segment of bridge gleamed therein, this one with Tri-State's sponsor logo etched discreetly. He exhaled. Proof of theft? Not yet. Then he heard footfalls. Ray emerged from the dispatch alcove holding a cordless drill. His smile was thin. "So you found it." Grant's throat tightened. "You're stealing club property." "Wrong. This is mine. Paid cash to the fabricator for a second copy. The original design was mine to begin with." Ray's voice grew tight. I spent 6 months drafting that CAD file, negotiating with the metal shop. The club loved basking in its glory, but balked when I proposed entering Tri-State. Too commercial, they said. We're a community club. Community. They leave me the cleanup, the leadership stress, the rent negotiations. I deserve more. Deserve a cash prize? Grant asked softly. Ray's eyes flickered. Call it compensation. Grant took a step. You set a bomb, Ray. Ray's expression stiffened. No, I set a distraction, a smoke charge. Scare them enough to cancel the expo so I could withdraw gracefully. Grant shook his head. It was a shaped charge, not a smoke bomb. You nearly killed us. Ray's grip on the drill slackened. Impossible. I bought flash powder from a theatrical supplier. Non-lethal. Grant told him about the mercury switch, the fragmentation potential. Ray's face drained of colour. I hired a kid online to assemble it. I gave specs for noise only. He must have upgraded. He sank onto a stool. God, God. Sirens wailed outside. Maria stepped in behind 2 officers. Grant had texted her an SOS. She'd called the police en route. Ray didn't resist as handcuffs clicked, yet he turned to Grant, eyes glossy. Tell them I never meant harm. Grant said nothing. The investigation that followed confirmed much of Ray's confession. A teenager from an extremist chat board, eager to test real ordnance, had built the device, assuring Ray it was just loud. Ray paid him via anonymous crypto, then drove an hour to collect the package. Ignorant of explosives, he trusted the kid. The plan, plant the device Wednesday night, discover it Thursday morning, save the club heroically, and argue that public safety required cancelling the Spring Expo. Amid confusion, Ray would resign, keeping his duplicate bridge and entering Tri-State Fest solo. The messy break-in early Saturday was a desperate pivot when police presence around the roundhouse tightened and his device had not yet been deployed. He swapped the real bridge with the bomb-stuffed replica, but bungled the disarm code, triggering the silent alarm. The prosecutor filed charges: reckless endangerment, possession of explosive device, conspiracy to commit destruction of property. Ray's attorney sought a plea bargain anchored on negligence rather than malice. The courts would decide. In the weeks before trial, Grant found himself acting interim president as well as treasurer. Membership morale teetered. Some wanted to cancel the expo. Others argued villainy shouldn't rob Green Valley of joy. Grant called a meeting in the roundhouse under newly installed LED security lights and spoke carefully. We build trains because the world outside can be too big, too random. Trains run on schedules, rails meet at measured gauges, bridges carry weight calculated to the ounce. That order is beautiful, but when we lose sight of people and chase perfection, we derail. Ray forgot why we lay track: to connect, not to isolate. He proposed they finish the canyon using foam board temporarily, hang placards explaining the ordeal, and invite visitors to watch them construct a new bridge live during the expo. We'll turn sabotage into storytelling, he said. Applause rose, tentative, then louder. Chip volunteered scenery expertise. Jessa promised a lighting effect. Fiber optic sparks would flicker along the welding seams, while volunteers riveted girders in real time. Maria invited local news, but also trauma counselors. Kids would get safety helmets made from yogurt cups. And Grant, pencil behind ear, balanced the budget to buy lumber for a spectator barrier. Opening day arrived crisp and bright. Orange sawdust floated in sunbeams as hammers rang across the hall. Children pressed noses to plexiglass, while members clamped eye beams. Jesser-triggered miniature arc flashes to delighted ooze. In a side alcove, a poster board thanked the police and bomb squad. Under it, fragments of the sabotaged replica lay sealed in resin, a cautionary artifact. Toward noon, Officer Bramwell stopped by off-duty, his son in tow. He shook Grant's hand. "Heard you turned detective," Grant chuckled. "Accountant, actually. Columns and rows expose the cracks." Bramwell gestured at the half-finished span. "Looks sturdy." Grant smiled. "Solid math underlies every joint, but the heart counts too. That's the ledger Ray ignored." As the afternoon stretched, a test locomotive crept across temporary timber decking, camera mounted on its cab. The crowd watched its POV feed on a projector, approaching abyss, bridging it, reaching safety, scenery painters waving. Cheers erupted. Maria leaned to Grant. "Remember when you said you wanted no excitement?" He stroked his beard. "I've revised my position. Moderate excitement, properly insured." That night, after guests left, the club gathered for pizza. Sawhorses served as buffet tables. The roundhouse smelled of tomato sauce and pine. Chip raised a bottle of root beer. To Grant, who balanced more than books, they clinked. Grant studied the canyon bathed in work lights. The new bridge skeleton glowed amber. Not perfect yet, but honest, with every joint inspected by friends. He realized the hobby had always been about shared craftsmanship, not solitary ownership. Rails connected towns, yes, but layouts connected people, each spike driven with laughter, each rivet with trust. He locked the petty cash tin, slid it onto the shelf, and turned off the lights. Outside, distant freight horns echoed across the valley, full-scale trains reminding him that model or real, journey and integrity mattered more than any gleaming trophy. The saboteur's replica now rested in a police evidence locker. Tri-State Fest awarded its grand prize to another club with a gorgeous helix. Yet Green Valley's patched-together canyon drew record donations, enough to fund a proper museum annex. Ironically, the dream Ray had chased the wrong way. On closing night, Grant stapled the final audit to the ledger and wrote a note at the bottom. Bridge rebuilt, tracks aligned, balance restored.